Okay, so we're going way back in time today for this deep dive.
Way back.
Yeah, like ancient times, ancient East Africa.
Wow, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because we have all this source material that basically shows that the ocean wasn't a barrier back then, but more like a highway.
Yeah, it was the way to get around.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to dive into this time when continents were connected by bustling trade routes and all this exchange.
A lot of action going on.
Yeah, a lot of action.
Yeah, your sources detail this really fascinating time period, and it's all shaped by the kingdom of Aksum.
Yeah.
The monsoon winds, those predictable winds.
Yeah.
And these incredible mariners who could navigate, huge distances.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, so in this deep dive, I think our goal is to really try to understand the key elements of this interconnected world.
Right.
And kind of see what it tells us about the past.
Yeah, I think that's a great goal.
Yeah.
So let's start with this big piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
Which is the Indian Ocean.
Oh, right.
So instead of thinking about it's this, big empty space,
right.
Imagine it crisscrossed with these invisible roads.
Oh.
Made of wind.
Okay.
So these are the monsoon winds.
The monsoon winds, yeah. And what's really interesting about them is how predictable they were.
Right?
It wasn't just like random gusts or anything. They shifted direction with the seasons like clockwork.
Like clockwork.
Yeah. For about half the year, they blew one way, and then reliably, they reversed.
Huh.
And that was a huge deal.
Yeah.
It wasn't just convenient. It meant that people could plan journeys. They could develop complex trade relationships over centuries.
And that's pretty remarkable, for the time.
It really is, yeah. The foresight
Yeah.
and the organization that must have taken.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really impressive.
Yeah, so basically, for centuries, these seasonal winds were a natural and recurring transport system.
Yeah, exactly.
So from about April to September, the winds would carry ships from East Africa towards India and beyond.
Yeah.
And then from October to March, they'd switch.
Right back.
Making the return trip just as dependable.
Yeah, you got it.
So now we've got this natural highway going.
Mm-hmm.
And the sources also mention this powerful kingdom that pops up around 100 CE.
Oh, yeah.
So that's like around the year 100 Common Era, right?
Yeah.
In the highlands of what's now Ethiopia and Eritrea.
Right.
And this is the kingdom of Achaia.
Aksum, a really important kingdom.
Yeah, what made them so central to this whole story?
Well, their location was key.
Okay.
If you look at the bigger picture, you'll see they sat right at the crossroads of these major trade routes.
Well.
So African, Mediterranean, and Asian.
Wow.
So they controlled inland resources like gold and ivory.
Right.
Which gave them a lot of power, when it came to negotiating with traders on the coast.
So even though they were inland,
yeah,
they were really driving this maritime exchange.
Yeah, they were the ones with the goods that everybody wanted.
Yeah, and what were these sought-after resources?
Right.
What did Aksum have that made them so important?
Well, like I said, they had gold and ivory, those classic African treasures.
Uh-huh.
And those were very, very valuable in other parts of the world.
So they could trade those for other things.
Yeah, exactly. And they acquired all sorts of things, from these distant lands.
That's so cool.
And there's another interesting thing about Aksum.
Oh.
In the 4th century, under King Ezana,
okay,
they adopted Christianity.
Wow.
So that shows you they were really connected to the wider world.
Yeah.
They weren't isolated at all.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So while this is all happening inland, there's also tons of stuff going on the coast.
Right.
And that's where these special boats come in.
The dhows.
Yeah, the dhows.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you've got these monsoon winds, and they're so important.
Yeah.
But you need a boat that can actually use those winds effectively.
Right.
And that's where the dhow comes in.
Okay.
They have these distinctive triangular sails
Oh.
that allowed them to harness the power of the monsoon winds no matter which direction they were blowing in.
So it was like having a car that could drive in reverse.
Yeah.
Just as fast as it could go forward.
Exactly. Adaptable.
Super adaptable, yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just anybody sailing these dhows.
Right.
I mean, your sources really emphasized the skill of these mariners.
Yeah.
Think about it. They didn't have any of the fancy instruments we have today.
Right.
They were navigating by the stars.
Wow.
By ocean currents.
Really?
And this deep understanding of the sea that had been passed down for generations.
So it's like all word of mouth and experience.
Exactly. Yeah, it was an incredible feat.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah. So these dhows powered by the monsoon winds and these, amazing sailors.
Right.
They were transporting all sorts of valuable goods.
All kinds of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of treasures are we talking about here?
Well, from East Africa, they exported those things we talked about, gold, ivory.
Okay.
And then these aromatic resins like frankincense and myrrh.
Oh, wow.
Which were super valuable for perfumes and religious ceremonies.
Interesting.
Yeah, and in return, they got luxury goods.
Oh, okay.
Like silk from China.
Yes.
Spices from India.
Ooh.
And porcelain from Persia.
That's a good haul.
Yeah, pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So it was a real exchange of riches.
Yeah, so all this trade led to the rise of some pretty important city-states along the coast.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like Mogadishu, Mombasa,
Yep.
and especially Kilwa.
Kilwa is a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these cities, they became independent centers of power, often ruled by sultans.
Right.
And they had incredible architecture.
Oh.
A lot of it built from white coral stone.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and Kilwa became particularly powerful because they controlled a lot of the gold trade that was coming from southern Africa.
So they were like the middlemen.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
They were right in the middle of everything.
Wow, and all of this interaction between, these diverse people and all these different goods led to something really unique.
It did, yeah.
The development of Swahili culture.
Swahili culture, exactly. So you have people from all over Africa.
Yeah.
Arabia. Persia.
Right.
All mixing and mingling. And that creates this incredible fusion of cultures and languages.
Yeah.
And Swahili itself is a Bantu language.
Okay.
That's a major language family in Africa. But it's absorbed so much vocabulary and influences from Arabic and Persian.
Because all this trade.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a perfect example of how trade and culture are intertwined.
Yeah, they go hand in hand.
For sure.
So basically what we're seeing here is that these predictable monsoon winds, they acted as a natural catalyst, enabling the Kingdom of Aksum and these coastal city-states to really build these extensive trade networks.
Across the entire Indian Ocean.
Yeah, using these dhow ships.
Powered by the wind.
Yeah, and guided by these incredible mariners.
That's in the business.
And this exchange of valuable goods, it not only, created wealth, but also led to this fascinating mix of cultures.
Right.
And ultimately the birth of Swahili civilization.
It's really amazing when you think about how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah. It really is.
The geography, the wind patterns, the ingenuity of the people.
It all played a role.
Yeah, it all came together to shape history.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been a really interesting deep dive.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. And I think it makes you wonder about, global interactions today.
Right.
Like, how are we connected to other parts of the world?
Yeah. And how do those connections shape our lives?
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about.
Absolutely.
Thanks for exploring this with us.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
All right, take care.
Bye.